Hello, everyone, and you're very welcome to this month's edition of the Social Media News Show. It's where Andy Lambert and I get together. He does the hard work, I do the listening, and hopefully you'll bring the questions and the conversation. As you know, Andy is CEO of Content Cal, and he does amazing work every month supporting his own community, but he very kindly comes over to Public Sector Marketing Institute and shares the news from social media from the last month. Andy, you're very welcome.
Hey Joanne, good to see you. Thanks for having me back.
Well, I asked you before we went live, do you have much news for me today? And you said, yes, lots. So let's get right into it. And I'll take notes. We'll take questions from the viewing audience and we'll have a little bit of a chit chat at the end.
Awesome. Right, let's do it. If you're familiar with the format, well, you'll be familiar. But if you're new to this, then we'll probably take the next, well, I'll say half an hour, but it'll end up being 40 minutes. So I'm going to try and rock it through this. But like I always say, but I'm going to reiterate it all the time, I'm going to go through lots of trends and updates and changes, etc. Don't feel you need to jump on everything. The idea of this session is to give you as much context as possible as to what's happening within the shifting sands of social media, because as we know, nothing ever stays static in this world, which is both a blessing and a curse. I prefer to look at it through the lens of opportunity, because opportunity is the key word, really, that is kind of going to be the focal point for all of today, because there is a lot that's happening. And the reason I'm calling this out is because we're going to start this session looking at more data than we usually do, because one of my favorite reports came out just towards the end of last month, 26th of January, and it encapsulates everything that's happened over the last year in the world of social. So it's bang up to date. And it gives us a really nice kind of data-driven approach where we might look at some of this data we're going to go through in a second and think maybe we should reorientate our strategy, or maybe it reaffirms some of our existing beliefs. But either way, we're going to dive into the data. Then we're going to look at the specific platform-orientated changes, what's happening on the networks, what are the new features we can leverage. And then we'll end up with a bit of a summary and a bit of a Q&A. But anyway, thanks for joining. I'm Andy. Joanne's already introed me. This is what the Content Cal looks like. As you can probably guess from our name, it's a content calendar. Who would have thunk it? So, place for you to organize, plan, strategize, and work with a team on creating the best possible content strategy and having that published across multiple platforms. As I said, let's start with the trends. Social media usage over time continues to grow. And what shocked me is that we've seen another year of double-digit growth, if you follow where my mouse is here. So 10% year-on-year growth, which, you know, I would have thought we would have seen some leveling off, some correction coming into, very cautiously saying, post-pandemic, at least kind of post-lockdown anyway. So it just goes to show there's still a lot of headroom for growth in social. Now, looking at that growth in a bit more detail, let's focus your eyes on the right-hand side here, that 10% double-digit growth. What does it actually mean? 424 million new people joined social and started actively using social media every single month within the last year. So really that kind of 4.6 billion, which is a total number now, about 4.6 billion is about 58% of the world's population. And that is incredible. And there isn't that much more headroom for growth. I'm expecting to see this level out, because if you look at where social media usage ranks to global internet users and global unique mobile phone users, we're really nearly, at complete maximum penetration of social. And, frankly, that is a incredible thing to be saying, that there is one technology that is linking the world in this manner. Of course, all that growth is going to get distributed across the multiple different platforms. We'll talk about some of Facebook's woes later on, which makes for some kind of interesting headlines, let's say. But Facebook still absolutely dominate the space and have increased their market share year over year still. So 2.9 billion monthly active users. So yeah, nearly half of the world's population just on Facebook alone, which is still a staggering statistic. But Facebook are being chased by YouTube. YouTube have grown in the last year their audience by 500 million, which is frankly astounding. We'll look at some YouTube stats in a bit as well. But yeah, YouTube, I feel really confident about where they're going as a business, and they're actually going more deeper into what you'd call traditional social media features, especially with their short form video called YouTube Shorts, which is their alternative or their take on Instagram Reels or TikTok. So yeah, feeling quite buoyant about YouTube. Instagram continues to grow as well. So, 1.5 billion, and TikTok here. You'll see some that you aren't familiar with, like WeChat, for example. This is global usage. So this involves some that aren't available in Western world, like WeChat, for example, big in China. But yeah, TikTok, as we already know, over 1 billion monthly active users. Arguably, their numbers even a bit bigger than that, so very much closing in on Instagram. I expect to see some parity between TikTok and Instagram in terms of usage when we look at this same data at the end of 2022, beginning of 2023. What you'll notice, conspicuous by its absence, is no LinkedIn. LinkedIn don't report monthly active usage. We'll talk more about LinkedIn specific data later on. But one thing to call out as well, Snapchat's growth, it's kind of, it happens, quite silently, I would say. Snapchat has continued to grow incredibly well. We'll talk in more detail about it. Doesn't get much media coverage. They don't release that many new features, but continues to gain traction. So it's definitely one to keep an eye on. But then there's another dynamic that we see in this report, and I think it's a really interesting take on this, because yes, usage will tell one story in terms of how many people monthly use those platforms. But then we can start to think about what platforms do people prioritize, can't say that word, prioritize over others. So, and this is when this survey, which asks thousands of people, what's your favorite social media platform? What is the platform you turn to above any others? And whilst WhatsApp still wins, really that's kind of out of scope for when we're talking about, distributing our message through social media channels. So let's look at the second one down, Instagram, Facebook. And if we ignore those other two here, WeChat and Douyin, because not applicable for the markets that we're talking about right now, TikTok and Twitter. So TikTok really people's third favorite platform if we're cutting through that. And even though Facebook might be the most used, Instagram seems to be the one that people turn to first. And Instagram, as you can see, a little more specifically, Instagram typically favored amongst the younger audience. It's the ones highlighted in orange are people's preferences. Younger audience certainly skewing female. So if that's your target persona, then it would suggest based on this data that Instagram is preferred really for younger female audiences, whereas Facebook is on the opposite side. So skews slightly older, skews slightly more male orientated in terms of people's favorite platforms. So outside of that, let's get into a bit more detail, because now we've seen incredible growth. We're seeing people's favorite platforms shift a little bit. We're seeing growth happen across different platforms as well. But in terms of the usage, the amount of time that people are spending on the platforms, I think this tells a really interesting story as well. YouTube clearly winning. I've called out YouTube already, but they beat all of the other channels for the amount of time that people spend on the platform. No massive surprise, considering it's more focused on long form video. But increasingly, as they shift more towards short form video, as they start to kind of go into a head-to-head war against TikTok, that's really interesting to see, because the more time spent on a platform, the more availability of content. So it means good things for us as marketers or businesses. So it means that when our content is distributed to these platforms where users spend the most time consuming content, it means the opportunity for our content to be seen is maximized. People are spending more time on the platforms. Also means good things for advertisers as well. What is particularly telling as well, if you look at TikTok versus Instagram, it nearly doubles it. The amount of time that people are spending on TikTok is nearly double what people are spending on Instagram. So all of the same things I've just spoken about maximizes the chance of our content being seen, maximizes our chances of organic engagement. And that's the thing that's got Instagram quaking in their boots, and why they're giving Reels such a hard push, really, because they know that as soon as the time that people spend on a platform drops, you'll notice that the content creators, the people that ultimately audiences are following onto a platform and liking and engaging their content, if people aren't there, the content creators leave and build their audiences on other platforms. So this really represents the underlying dynamic that's governing how social media runs. And one thing that is particularly interesting when you look at the time that's spent on a platform, in particular, if we look at a UK orientated audience, very rare that we'll see UK the top of any chart. Apparently in the UK, we spend more time consuming TikTok than anywhere else in the world. And in fact, that means that in the UK, TikTok is the most used social media app by time spent on the platform. Now, that is a compelling statistic if we're targeting audiences in the UK. really interesting things to think about, and the underlying dynamics that help us think about our channel strategy. Like, I know we might be thinking in the back of our mind, should we be on TikTok? But realistically, if you're targeting a demographic in the UK, you want to maximize organic reach. Really, I mean, I do say this every month, but really the data is too compelling for us to ignore it. But something else that's a really interesting dynamic that's going on is the demographics. Social media isn't for kids anymore, nor has it been for a number of years, but there's still some kind of entrenched legacy thoughts around social. Really, social has now got a very broad spread, of which has been influenced heavily by the events of 2020, let's say. And now to a point, one thing I want to call out in this slide is that the audience that's over 50 now is larger than the audience that's 13 to 19. That is a huge shift. That shows that we've gone mainstream. And of course we have. It's 58% of the world's population and about 80% of the world's internet users now are on social. So realistically, it's never a case of saying, is our audience on social? They absolutely are. It's just a case of what channels and platforms we're going to use and what formats of our content are we going to use to target those individuals. Average number of social platforms used. This is data can be slightly misleading, but it does tell a good underlying story. So here worldwide, as you can see, the average number of social platforms, whether people are active or not, 7.5 is the worldwide average. So what that actually means, though, if we dig beneath the surface, is that if we're thinking about just using one channel to target our ideal customer, we're probably missing the opportunity. And I always obsess over this data, which is possibly, the nerdiest slide and the most complex to understand, but one of the most important. Because when you think about users having multiple social channels, we understand the importance of targeting them across multiple channels. And when you start to look at the audience overlaps, let's assume, people have on average 7 or 8 or 7.5, but you can't have half a social network profile. So let's just say 8 social media profiles. Of course, they're going to be across multiple different networks. Now, across the major networks, under 1% of those users across all of them, so under 1% of those are unique to a platform. So what that means is that if we're focusing on, let's say, LinkedIn, because we haven't called out LinkedIn much so far, only 0.2% of LinkedIn users are unique to that platform. So if we have a mindset to say, all right, well, the content we create is only for LinkedIn and we focus only on LinkedIn because that's where our audience is, that is statistically not true. So here, what we can start to see is what other channels should we potentially bring into our channel strategy, even if we're leading with LinkedIn. There's nothing wrong with majoring on a platform, and I advocate for this. I advocate for majoring on a certain platform. LinkedIn is our jam here at Content Cal. And that's where we spend all the time engaging with the community, because you can't be everywhere. Let's face it, small teams cannot be everywhere. So major on a platform, especially if you've got a small resource constrained team, major on one platform, but then maximize your distribution by publishing content to multiple other platforms. So in the case of LinkedIn, we'd want to be focusing on making sure we're publishing at least to Facebook, Insta, and also, even if you look at TikTok, for example, 50% of LinkedIn users also use TikTok. So typically you might think, oh, TikTok is not for B2B or not for my industry. It's just not strictly true, right? Because yes, it requires us to think more creatively. Yes, the type of content we're going to create is a little bit different, or quite a lot different. If we're looking at the difference between LinkedIn and TikTok in this example, but you get the idea, is that the fact is we shouldn't discount certain platforms from our strategy, because fundamentally, our audience are distributed across multiple platforms. So it's our job to maximize the reach by thinking about all those different channels that we can bring into the mix. So that focuses on the kind of organic piece, but I wanted to call out some interesting data when it comes to social media advertising spend, because I look at this statistic and I get a little bit intimidated and scared by it, if I'm honest. That growth in social media advertising over the last year is absolutely massive. So lots more money flowing to social media ads, which is, it's good in terms of the social media ecosystem, but bad for us as marketers ourselves, because that means increasing competition. What increasing competition means for ads means increasing cost per clicks. Basically, the cost to participate goes up. And we've seen this, we've shown data in the last previous months of how quickly advertising costs are going up and how click-through rates are staying pretty static. So as a result, we're seeing less return on our advertising spend. So it's something to bear in mind that we need to be thinking about ads having been part of our strategy, but we really need to be thinking about leveraging our opportunity across organic channels, looking at the places where the channels are focusing their growth on, and then optimizing our plans for those. And what I mean by that, let's just say, we want to focus a bit more on short form video under 3 minutes in length. We know that the best place to place that right now will be TikTok, because the organic reach on there outweighs any other platform. So we're more likely to reach more people because more people are spending time on the platform, and it's a platform less driven by ads. So more space for organic content to thrive. But then what we could do as well, because we know that YouTube are focusing heavily on their new Shorts product, as our Instagram focusing heavily on Instagram Reels, we can use that short form video and then publish that across multiple different platforms, which maximizes our reach and engagement, which is a nice way of increasing our reach and impact without having to get into the kind of bun fight that is advertising spend currently. Now, Q4 also, remember, this is kind of looking at kind of Q4 data year over year. Q4 is the biggest spend for advertising as well. So, going into Christmas period. So we will see some correction, but year over year, we're still seeing significant increases in it. So we need to be mindful, and we need to be thinking broadly about our advertising strategy, because we need to be thinking about how to leverage our organic growth I've spoken about, and also leveraging other opportunities for where we place our ads. Typically, the costs are highest when you're placing ads in a Facebook feed, an Instagram feed. Costs are much lower, however, when you're placing ads on either other platforms like TikTok, for example, or in different formats. So like Instagram stories or Instagram Reels, for example, much lower cost per click. So think about those different formats and channels for your ads as a way to counter the increasing costs that are happening around, your typical Facebook and Insta feed advertising. Hopefully that makes some sense. But advertising is really key, because it is driving a huge source of brand discovery. So I love this. You'll probably want to cast your eyes over this for a little bit, because this is where people are discovering brands and products and services for the first time. So for me, this is, well, for everyone, this is hugely, hugely important. Search engines still reign supreme, as they always have. Ads on TV, it's the first time I've actually seen this reported, because they add different kind of metrics into this report each time we see it. Ads on TV, as you can see. Interesting, actually, that search, so optimizing your content to rank well in Google, outperforms ads on TVs for where people are discovering brands for the first time. It's good to know for any SEO strategists amongst us. Word of mouth, however, word of mouth is really what organic social media is all about. So this is third, right? So this is what we need to be thinking about in our content strategy, engineering word of mouth at scale. Ways to do that through organic content we've spoken about, tagging people into conversations, encouraging more interaction on your posts, engaging with all the comments that happen on your posts, creating a community, as Joanne has done, maximizing the opportunity for communities to come together to share, best practice, etc. So word of mouth and lighting a fire under that is basically our number one ambition for what we're trying to achieve with social. So it's good to see that it's the third most popular source of brand discovery. But there, on the fourth one, we'll see ads on social media. Hence the reason, it's having a huge impact in the way that people discover products for the first time, which is in turn driving up interest and demand in social media ads, which is also driving up the cost. But then when we're looking a bit more granular level at the use of social in particular for brand research, we'll see that we'll focus more on a younger audience. We'll typically turn to social first before anything else. So whereas the data I showed you on the previous slide is general 16 to 64, so it takes in a broad swathe of a demographic, whereas this is just focused on those specific demographics, which can be more relevant actually, especially if you're thinking about your own target audience, who you're trying to appeal to, and it helps you prioritize. Because if you're targeting 16 to 24-year-olds, being social first in your strategy, because that's where they will turn to first to discover new products, services, brands, whatever. So with that is your kind of key trends, the key things that are happening in the world of social from a data perspective. So for the next 10 minutes, let's dive into what are the specific features that are launching. And let's start with Meta. So got a few kind of data points as well to start with as well. And this is sometimes just a bit of stark reality here. When we look at the average engagement rate on a Facebook post, it's down at 0.07%. So that is the percentage of people across your total page followers that interact with your content, like, comment on it, etc. So as you can see, that's quite shockingly low. However, I mean, video is only marginally better than that. So what we're facing here is actually a real challenge with Facebook. And I would definitely encourage any questions. I'm actually interested in your thoughts as well, Joanne, about, your experiences with Facebook too, because from us internally, from Content Cal's perspective, really struggling with marketing on Facebook. It feels like there's a lot of challenges at Facebook at the moment. So I'm a little bit down on Facebook as a platform to extend our reach and grow our brands, but I would like to be convinced otherwise, to be honest. But we'll cover that at the end. Facebook Reels is now a thing. So Reels has now come to Facebook, exactly the same as Instagram, but really Facebook are absolutely trying to drive the usage of this as a feature, which could actually mean good things really for our Facebook strategy. Even though I sounded a bit down in the previous slide, Reels could potentially give us a boost of reach, because naturally, as we said, whenever new features come to a platform, there is first mover advantage for those early adopters of those features. So maybe Reels could be that thing. Reels are also going to be able to be shared from Facebook to Instagram, which once again goes back to that multi-channel platform approach that we spoke about before. The importance of getting content into multiple different channels also maximizes the leverage of our content, because we only need to create once and we can publish to multiple places. So that is definitely a benefit. And the main headline for Facebook, actually, not many updates, because Facebook have had a bit of a horrible February because their users declined for the first time in their 18-year history, which had a disastrous effect on their stock price. They're still one of the world's biggest companies. They're not going anywhere overnight, but they're definitely in for a bit of a tough ride. And I think if we were majoring on Facebook as our platform to grow our business, I think there's some dubious territory there, to be honest. We feel like we're building a house on sand on Facebook at the moment. But once again, I'm definitely open to other people's thoughts on that. But over to Instagram, this gives a bit of a feeling for what I spoke about earlier about the advertising formats as well. So this gives you an idea of who you can reach with Instagram stories. So they have incredible reach for stories. So 72% of total Instagram audience can you reach with stories ads. Interestingly, your stories ads are more orientated towards females. Actually, females utilize stories more than a male demographic, only marginally, but yeah, still significantly so. So that could be another opportunity to increasing your advertising returns, lowering your advertising click-through rate, not lowering your click-throughs, lowering your cost per click, but hopefully giving you a similar click-through rate. Similar thing with Reels. Reels doesn't quite have the same impact from an advertising perspective, but it's a newer format for Instagram, and we know they're pushing Reels hard. So that gives us an opportunity to get outsized returns for our advertising on Reels. And when we're looking at the specific demographics of Instagram, you'll notice they're starting to skew a little bit older. Certainly the 25 to 44 bracket has continued to grow. Actually, it's becoming a little more male dominated, which is interesting as time progresses. But Instagram used to have one of the younger audiences, but you can see that kind of distribution curve slowly moving to the right. Engagement benchmarks. Instagram is still a good place to drive organic engagement. If you remember, the average engagement of Facebook was 0.07. We're at 1.94 with Instagram, which is, still only, 2 in 100 people will engage with your content in some way. So it's still not incredible, don't get me wrong, but it's a significant improvement on Facebook. But what is particularly telling actually about Instagram is that they're pushing carousels quite heavily at the moment. As you can see, a significant engagement rate increase for carousel content. We've actually shared this in previous slides, so it's interesting to see it replicated in the data here. So yeah, carousels give you the best opportunity to drive engagement, and engagement for video. And that is different. That is a different thing from what we spoke about last month. In the months previous, I've been saying that video posts in the feed, yeah, they're not really worth the time and effort and investment in creating, because it doesn't drive more engagement than photo posts. That's now flipped around. That it seems that Instagram are prioritizing video very heavily, which takes us quite nicely into a bit of a growth hack. I don't like growth hacks in general. I don't like the word hack in general. I think it encourages the wrong behaviors, but sometimes things are too good to ignore. And this represents a really significant mindset shift within Instagram, because now we're seeing some of the biggest meme accounts within Instagram focus on putting very short videos together. This would typically be an image, but they're actually just doing it as a 1-second video, micro video, because there seems to be no minimum length for a video on Instagram. This is correct as of now. Things can change all the time. But even as you can see, a commenter on this post, anyone else notice there's a lot of videos that are just pictures in Insta now. So the reason that this works so well is because Instagram are prioritizing video. They've been very clear about that. They are pushing towards video. And as you can see in the data before, we've now seen for the first time video content go above single image posts in terms of engagement rate. So we know that Instagram are all about that. But a short video in particular is very interesting, because when you have a video like that, it loops and loops and loops very quickly. It will loop like 5 times, even if you're scrolling past it. That all contributes to the view count. And of course, as we said right at the beginning, the focus of the social platforms is about getting maximum people, or getting the people to spend as much time as possibly they can on the social media platforms. And one way of doing that is driving video views. So here, what you can see is just the algorithm ticking a box to say lots of video views. That must mean that the post is good, so it gets sent to more people. So that is, to be honest, how algorithms work, and that's how Instagram works. And it gives us a really nice insight into where Instagram are going, the priority they put behind video, and also gives us a bit of a tactic that we might use for Instagram to encourage maximum engagement. They're also working a lot on Instagram Live. We know live streaming has been a significant contributor to engagement. In fact, live streaming, as just to kind of call on something we called out last week, live streams in general are the content format that generates more engagement than anything else. So now you can schedule these Instagram lives and people can kind of register for them and kind of bookmark them. Great thing to encourage the discovery of our lives, and also make it much more user-friendly for those kind of adding that to their diary. Likes is coming to stories as well, or has come to stories. This is available now. These are private likes, however, so won't show up publicly, but it's just another signal to both you and also to the algorithm that your stories are being appreciated by your audience. So small update, but very important. They've updated the poll sticker. Polls are brilliant to run in stories, because anything that maximizes audience participation and engagement is always the thing you need to do, because the more people that engage and participate in your content, the more your content gets shared with others, the more your engagement rate goes up, etc. So the poll sticker is just a nice way to make your polls look more appealing, gives you a bit more customization control, and also a fantastic way of gleaning insights from your audience. Something else they're simplifying is allowing you to convert stories highlights to reels. So stories highlights, as a reminder, allows you to save stories, because obviously stories are ephemeral, so they only last 24 hours. So stories highlights, which has existed for a long time, allows you just to save those stories. Now, once you've got those saved stories, which are kind of like little video snippets you want to keep, you can convert them to reels. So this is just a really nice way of cross-pollinating our content across different formats. And to their credit, Facebook and Instagram are doing lots to help users take existing assets and repurpose them in different formats, because that is a really important kind of takeaway for this session. We need to start thinking format first rather than thinking social channel first, because what I mean by that is that we need to be considering like reels or lives, or we need to be considering like carousels or duets or video posts, short form videos, whatever. We need to be considering that, and then considering whatever content format works for us, what channels work for that content format. So if we've done, if we've created a short form video, which in this instance was a story, we can then repurpose that into an Instagram reel, into a Facebook reel, etc. And if it's still a short form video, nothing's to stop us saying we can put that on Instagram, we can put that on, we put that on TikTok, or we can put that on YouTube Shorts, for example. Thinking format first rather than thinking channel first opens up the possibility of how we can repurpose our content across these different channels, because we're building around the formats that are kind of, let's say, ubiquitous across all the different channels. Hopefully that makes sense, but I can clarify if need be. So a way of like lowering the creative barriers, Instagram are doing a few tests, which I'm going to fly through really quickly. They're testing templating for Reels, which allows you to take existing video stuff that you've done, allows you to build a template out of that so that you can build on that further, which kind of lowers the creative barriers to entry for doing Reels. They're also testing pinning of posts to your profile as well, similar to what they have on Twitter, allows you to highlight some core and key content you want users to see. They're also thinking of adding reels to the grid as well. So the Instagram kind of 9-box grid currently is just your images you post in your feed, but reels could well be part of that very soon. And they're also testing 90-second reels as well. Currently at 60, but it was the same journey with TikTok. TikTok were like 15, 30, then 45, then 60 seconds, went to 90. Now they're at 3 minutes. So you'll see like short form video starts to evolve, starts to get longer, which also, again, opens up the creative possibility, because doing something entertaining and rich in 30 seconds is super hard. Doing something in 90 seconds is orders of magnitude easier. And also, I wanted to include this, even though it's not a feature as such, but now there's a new feature on Instagram called Request Help from Friends. So if you ever find yourself locked out of Insta, which you see lots of people on social saying, help, I'm locked out, how do I regain access? Now you can ask a friend to validate and vouch for you so you can regain access if you lose your Insta. So Twitter, they're testing out collabs. Collabs allows you to post along with someone else so that your content goes in both your feed and someone else's. So Joanne and I could do a collab, and this exists on Instagram and TikTok right now. So we could do a collaboration and both of our audience would see our content. Fantastic way to drive reach. Anyone that's ever heard me talk before will know that I am a huge proponent of collaborations. We're doing one right now. So, all content is always better created together. So I'm a massive supporter of the platforms that are really starting to realize that. Twitter are growing again. They've had a few months or a few quarters really of stagnant growth, but now they're growing again, which is really encouraging to see. But not many other updates from a Twitter front. On LinkedIn, actually, I'm going to kind of move forward fairly quickly here. Good percentage growth, so 11.1% year-on-year growth. So really encouraging to see LinkedIn's growing faster than Twitter. Actually, one of the fastest growing platforms over the last year. So LinkedIn doing really well. In particular, the audience demographics haven't shifted very much. It's not the most diverse audience in the world. It's fair to say. Very male dominated, of a certain demographic as well, within a certain age range. But if that's your target, then happy days. They've also hit 810 million users. As I said earlier, LinkedIn don't disclose how many is monthly, which is what the data we were looking right at the beginning was. But 810 million users is still absolutely significant. And if that's growing 11.1% year over year, we know that LinkedIn are in a good place. And they've also said that they've seen record levels of engagement. What that actually means, I don't know, but Microsoft don't really disclose that much details about LinkedIn. But we know it's in a good place. Something that's really useful, just a small feature, but very useful and tactical. You'll notice this little bell icon will have appeared in everyone's profile. So if you want to get notifications of a certain individual, fantastic way to inspire you of content that you could do. So if you find those people that you think are brilliant on LinkedIn and always saying really good things, just put the little notification icon on. You'll get notified when they create a post, and that gives you a fantastic way of getting those ideas for when someone you inspires you create something that could give you the spark of creativity for you to create something in a similar vein. Equally, you might want to optimize your content and encourage people through your content to say, if you want to find out more of this, or if you want to get this regular, hit the bell icon and they'll be notified of your content, which is super, super powerful in ensuring that you get maximum reach and distribution of your content. They've also rolled out some improvements to the services page. This will only be applicable if you provide services like freelancing, or any form of services from a small business perspective. So this services page allows you to display the services that you offer and testimonials, etc., and will be presented within the LinkedIn marketplace. And that marketplace has seen a significant growth over the last couple of years. And that LinkedIn marketplace is a place for freelancers to connect with individuals that are looking for full services. So very similar to like Fiverr or Upwork or something like that. But the services page allows you to present yourself and your profile in a more holistic way. On to TikTok. So TikTok, big growth, as we can see, 7.3%, not massive quarter-on-quarter growth, actually slightly behind LinkedIn, but still in an incredibly good place. You'll see the usage demographic is more heavily female-based, actually, which is particularly interesting. That most of the social platforms are very male-orientated. So TikTok and Pinterest, that we're going to talk about in a second, much more female-orientated. So it could be an interesting thing for our channel strategy. And as we expect, skews slightly more young, but you'll see the demographics getting bigger and bigger towards the middle as well. So over time, that matures. And like we saw with kind of Instagram's distribution, we'll see those bar charts like shift to the right over time. This can be really useful, going back to the points that I was talking about with advertising and the different formats and channels we can advertise on. They've launched this tactics advertising course, so you can get a bit of an idea of how best to leverage ads on TikTok. It's all pretty simple at the moment, to be honest. Their advertising product is more simplistic than the others, but to be honest, that's a bit of a benefit if we're not seasoned advertisers, and the costs are lower. TikTok are promoting duets. Duets has been a big thing and a big innovation for TikTok, and I absolutely love it. Like I was talking about, the whole kind of collaborative stuff. So basically what duets allows you to do is that, let's say I saw a TikTok of Joanne. Let's say Joanne doing a dance. TikTok is more to that, but I just want to cast that image. So there you go. So Joanne's doing a trending dance, and then I want to attempt to copy it, which I would fail at massively. But then we can kind of like, it would be a side-by-side screen of Joanne and myself trying to copy and imitate that dance. The reason that's really important, flipping back to a more kind of serious side of social, is that allows content to be built on top of one another. And rather than the engagement just being limited to the fact that you could like it and you can comment on it, now you can build on it, you can do your own take on it. And for me, that is a critical part of social. That's the next generation of social. And if we can empower our communities to do this, in the same way that we'd empower our communities to engage with our content, to say, oh, tell me your favorite, or what's your approach to X or whatever, or putting out a poll. That's typically the way that we've garnered audience engagement right now. Now we could say, put out a video and say, who can copy this? The best duet wins X prize. And then we suddenly see content proliferate, where actually user-generated content suddenly grows much, much bigger, because you've got lots of people tagging you, creating versions of a video. You suddenly see a trend, a mini trend emerge. And that is, for me, the real power that exists within duets as a feature. And I really think like all of the other social channels will cotton onto this. Instagram have already ripped this feature off and they called it remixes. But all of the other social channels will think about this in the fullness of time. TikTok are also taking the same approach to Instagram, as scheduling lives as well. Just goes to show how live streaming is so important for the platforms. Really, short form video and live streaming and collaborative stuff like duets are the three main content formats we really need to take away and think about throughout the course of 2022 and beyond. Yeah, just as a kind of reiteration of those: short form video, so video under 3 minutes, live streaming, and collaborative orientated content, duets and collabs. They're the three main kind of strands of content, formats of content we really should be thinking about, the ones that are really driving growth. Pinterest, as I said, this is one of the platforms that skews more female than any of the others. The kind of features they've added, they're going big into shopping, like e-commerce stuff. I mean, if anyone's used the IKEA app, it's pretty similar to this, but it does make for a fantastic shopping experience. I know the audience on this session aren't so focused on this, but it's kind of interesting nonetheless, that from a user perspective, they can look at, search chairs, be given a load of inspiration for those chairs, and also can see how that product looks in their room before making and completing that purchase directly on Pinterest. And that's a really powerful shopping experience. Now, despite me talking about something that's really powerful, Pinterest growth is on a bit of a downward trend, though. Had a huge boom at the start of the pandemic, growing 30%. And we're seeing a bit of a correction here. I don't see there's any major issues, but yeah, fundamentally, it's something to keep an eye on there, where any platform that's kind of going in reverse like this is definitely a bit of a concern. Into the final couple now, Snapchat. Snapchat's audience is actually very balanced between male and female, and you'll notice that Snapchat are on that journey that TikTok will go on, where the audience profile will start to skew more towards the right-hand side, and we can already see that happening, where 13 to 17-year-olds, which was the heartland of TikTok initially, when TikTok was just kind of like a lip syncing app where it's focused on people trying to, sing songs. It really did proliferate in the younger audience, but now we see 25 to 35 outnumbering that audience. So you can see that, as platforms mature, you can start to see the age range and demographics shifting. They're also focusing heavily on augmented reality, like Pinterest are. As you can see, this next generation of their lenses, they call them. So people can try on their shades like this and purchase them. Fantastic shopping experience. Again, it's fun, it's interactive. You can see how your shades look and then purchase them. And then, because that seems like so difficult to get to that level, Snapchat are actually, to their credit, they're doing a lot in terms of making this really accessible. So they've released this lens builder tool. So you can make those lenses like this. This is what we'd call lenses. So those things that you can ultimately, Snapchat's technology will map your face so you can put things onto your face based on these lenses. So really, really powerful for brands to get on the back of. Allow people to kind of interact, immerse themselves in products, and then make purchasing decisions directly through there. And as I said right at the beginning, Snapchat have had a fantastic time, growing at 20% year over year. And one very interesting move that is just, it doesn't impact our strategies, but it's definitely something very interesting to look at the future, is that they're starting to share ad revenue with creators. Because we know that the success of social media platforms is driven at its core by those that create content on the platforms. So now they're starting to share advertising revenue with the creators, which is a very important step in recognizing that, Snapchat don't bring the value here, the creators bring the value. So it only seems fair that creators should actually be compensated for that and compensated properly. This is really at the core of the creator economy, to be honest. YouTube, as I said, very balanced demographic across all different audiences. And if you're targeting those that are in an older demographic, they have the strongest older generation demographic. Shorts has hit 5 trillion views as well. So Shorts has been a huge success for them. And Reddit, we never talk about this, but Reddit is a really good community tool, a fantastic tool for listening to an audience. They've rolled out a feature, and this was about a year ago, called Reddit Talk, and they've added a whole bunch of new features to it. So this is like Clubhouse, like audio, live audio. This is a bit more niche, but to be honest, if your category is being spoken about on Reddit, this could be an interesting one to consider. Reddit is less saturated with brands and ads, but if you represent something that's particularly topical, you can bet your bottom dollar there will be some subreddits, which are basically forums and threads that focus on your particular category. I spend a lot of time Reddit when I'm in kind of market research mode. But otherwise, I did say I'd overrun, and there you go. Well, I was true to my promise. I really should stop speaking so much. But anyway, you made it. Let's summarize it in 6 steps. Large growth across all social platforms. social media's impact continues to grow, demographics getting more balanced. We're seeing platforms and emerging trends everywhere. Facebook, still a bit of a question mark for me over that at the moment, as they begin their transition into the metaverse and everything and whatever that means that our typical Facebook strategies might be in for a rethink. Big changes ahead for Instagram, as you would have seen by all of the updates I went through today. Most of them are focused on Instagram. Instagram are pushing very, very hard on video in particular. Short form videos continue to grow. I've spoken about that a lot as a content format. AR is going to transform social shopping that we just touched on, and social media ads is hitting at an inflection point where everything I've spoken about earlier, we need to be thinking about our advertising strategy across, much broader spectrum, not focusing purely on the feeds, because we know costs are only going to go up for that, and we're seeing diminishing click-through rates. And with that, I hand back to you now, Joanne.
Thanks, Andy. You can take a breather. What an epic update. And I did see that report coming from Hootsuite, and honest to goodness, it is really worth it, because very often, we get data as monthly active users or business reports from the social networks, but for somebody to put it all together for us is amazing. And then for you to interpret it for us is even better. So we have some conversation happening in chat, but we have a question here. So with social media growing, with more time being spent on the social apps, Mohammed wants to know, what is the degree of trust towards social media data, especially for scientific research? Now, what I will say is I work a lot in the science and research space with clients, from academic research, marine research, health research. And what I would say is that during COVID-19, there was an explosion of subject matter experts joining platforms like Twitter. Twitter were there then subsequently verifying them. And I even had this conversation with Twitter also. And they said, we invite more experts and verified thought leaders onto our platform because you contribute to the truth rising to the top. So what I would say, in my experience of those particular research clusters, I think that they are trusted on social media because you bring your expertise. And as Andy's analysis has shown today, more and more people are using search as a discovery tool. So it's almost like a first or a second point of contact for them. Andy, do you have anything to add to that?
I think you've interpreted it really, really well. It's a good example as well. For me, like with any form of data, if you're asking about the data specifically here, any form of data, I'll always take it with a pinch of salt, right? It's guidance. But I think it's the best possible thing that we can do. It's the best possible data we have at our disposal. And for me, if you're talking about this data set particularly in question, then it's probably the one I trust the most. But there's still an element of pinch of salt to it, right? Because unless it's data that you have sourced personally yourself, there's always going to be an element of bias to it. So yeah, it's probably the way I'll answer it.
Yeah, so two kind of perspectives on that. And what I'll just do is I'll put the link to that report in chat so you guys can go and have a look. And Andy usually is very kind at sharing his slides as well. Some interesting points to note, if we think about last month versus this month, obviously we have the growth figures. The Facebook user drop for the first time in 18 years is interesting. And you posed the question during your presentation, Andy, how are people using Facebook at the moment and how are you feeling about it? I think my clients are definitely suffering from that drop in organic reach, and that ability to just get through the noise to get to your citizens. But one thing that I think still remains valuable is Facebook, I'm seeing, is still the biggest driver of website traffic. So people are still, the media are sharing news, articles, experts are sharing news and articles, and it's bringing people to their website. So Facebook is still very valuable for that. So go ahead and look at your Google Analytics, look at the acquisition, see the social media breakdown, and see if Facebook is still the #1 social network bringing web traffic. And I know people say perennially, Andy, that, oh, don't share web links on Facebook. Facebook hates it and punishes you from taking people away. But if I'm getting the click through at the other side, I will sacrifice that for the likes and the comments.
Too right. It's brilliant to get that proper anecdotal evidence to say it's like, you know, I'd never like to class anything as like, oh, we shouldn't do this, or Facebook has paid to play, or Facebook's dead, yada yada. It's always more nuanced than that. So, you know, I'm with you. I'm with you. We have resorted to link sharing too on Facebook, and distributing our other content we want to drive traffic to. So, yeah, it's good to know. It's good to know.
Another kind of gold soundbite that you've had is think format first and not social channel first. And honestly, short form video as the primary content format that's getting you that algorithmic boost these days, that fits into YouTube Shorts, it fits into TikTok, it fits into Reels, now it fits into Facebook. So create once, repurpose, and share often, right? That's the advice.
Absolutely that.
And,
nothing more to add. You smashed it.
and honestly, what I'm kind of saying to my clients is, will you just go back to the ABCs and the 1, 2, 3? What is the key information that people want to know? Now put your face in front of the camera, use the Reels camera, the TikTok camera, trending sounds, text overlay, off you go. I'm actually interviewing a solicitor, Richard Grogan, who is gone social media famous because of his TikToks and his Instagram Reels. And he literally invites people to ask him for legal advice. He gives them free legal advice within a reel, and it has exploded. And all he's doing, and not take away from him, it's brilliant, is he's got his phone on a tripod. He's looking down the lens of the camera. He's got the question on text overlaid over him, and he answers the question within like 90 seconds. And then he's got this tagline, it's the law, it's the fact, and it's unbelievable. And so you don't have to dance, you don't have to duet, but if you've got content and you can add value to your users' experience, then you're on to a winner for sure.
100%. Those examples, need to be surfaced more often. So it's brilliant that you're giving that individual a platform, because you know that is absolutely the thing that we need to change perceptions of, is especially regarding any form of short form video. Like, you know, we've always got three things we can do: we can entertain, we can inspire, we can educate, right? So just pick one of the three, and that's the same on every platform. So yes, you know, TikTok might be a little more kind of entertainment focused initially, but that for some of the platforms that you might, or some of the individuals that you might have seen get initial success, but that education content strand, so powerful, applies to every single channel. So yeah, I think sometimes we overcomplicate things.
Yeah, and actually, as the social networks feel as if they're getting more complicated, we need to simplify our content, because it's that simple content that's resonating most. And then the final trend is the whole collaboration, right? It's the remixing on Reels, it's the duetting on TikTok, and then brilliantly, didn't know this, Twitter stepping into the collab opportunity. And this is why we do this show. You know, we've got a shared audience. We both can bring something to the table, although you bring more to the table every month than me. And we get to collaborate. And so, you know, it's really simple concepts, but that can be really powerful. And I know in government and public sector, similarly in business, we all have a partner that we can jump on and go, hey, do you want to do this feature with me once a month? And let's do it consistently and add value. And when you come up from a place of adding value, then the rest will happen, right?
100%. Yeah, that is the truth. That's for sure.
So listen, loads happening as always this month. Andy's solid advice is you don't have to do everything. Think about format first, but lean into the tactics that are working, because it's ever increasingly difficult to get high engagement rates. And Andy, would you agree we still need money to pay to play in this environment? We need to assign some budget.
Yeah, no, whether it's budget to spend on the channels or resource that we need for our team, yeah, if we don't get something for nothing. So and we'll get lost if we try and do everything ourselves. So yeah, no, fun. The opportunity is too big to not invest. Like I said, investing in advertising placement or investing in resource, whatever. Yeah, all you're doing, you've got an incredible vehicle, and you basically put no wheels on it.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, well, listen, that is a wrap for this month. You go and have a rest to yourself now. Super job as always. We really appreciate, Andy, what you bring to the social media news show every month. And if people want to find out more about Content Cal, where they should they go?
Yeah, you can just head to contentcal.com, and I always welcome new connections on LinkedIn. So yeah, you just find me under my name.
Well, listen, have a great afternoon, and I will see you next month.
Amazing. Same time next month. Cheers.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.